If you ask 10 roguelike fans to name the most influential deck builder ever made, there is a good chance most of them would say Slay the Spire. It's one of those rare games that quietly rewired an entire genre. Hundreds of games followed its formula, some copied it, some evolved it, but none of them quite replaced it. So when Megacrit finally revealed Slay the Spire 2, expectations immediately shot through the roof. Not because the original needed a sequel, but because they somehow made it even better. After spending time with the early version, this video isn't a full review. Instead, think of it as a first impressions deep dive, and honestly, a bit of a celebration, because Slay the Spire 2 is already something special. Sequels can be tricky, especially for games that already feel complete. The original Slay the Spire was elegant. 4 characters, a tight card pool, endless replayability. You could easily imagine a sequel that simply added more cards and called it a day. But Slay the Spire 2 is clearly aiming for something more ambitious. It keeps the DNA that made the original incredible. The strategic deck building, the branching map, the tense combat encounters, but it introduces new characters, new mechanics, and a new, refreshed visual style that makes the whole experience feel surprisingly modern. And the most exciting part for me, the new characters already hint at some creative design. I will not get into the new cards or new relics, as I think there are better people than me at this game to dive deep into those elements. And on top of that, I believe that you learn by playing, and replayability here is key. That is, in my opinion, one of its biggest advantages. One of the first things that stood out to me in Slay the Spire 2 is the new enemy design. The game clearly keeps some of the classic ideas that worked so well in Slay the Spire, like enemies that summon reinforcements or revive stronger versions of themselves, but many of those mechanics now feel expanded and more dramatic. Boss encounters, in particular, seem to lean more into multi-phase fights, where defeating an enemy can trigger a stronger second form or a new set of behaviors. It makes these battles feel more dynamic and less predictable. What surprised me even more was the variety early on. In my first 4 runs, the very first floor was very different every time, with different starting enemies appearing right away. Something I don't really remember happening in the original game, where those opening fights tended to repeat more often. That early variety already makes runs feel more distinct. On top of that, the sequel introduces certain mechanics earlier that originally appeared much later on the path toward the heart, like some of the trickier behaviors seen in late game mini bosses. Seeing those ideas appear earlier in the climb is a great touch, because it spices up the early game and immediately signals that this Spire is going to throw new challenges at you from the very beginning. And one of the defining strengths of the original Slay the Spire was how different each character felt. The Ironclad focused on strength and healing, the Silent relied on poison and shivs, the Defect introduced orbs and complex synergies, and the Watcher added stance, dancing, and explosive turns. Each character didn't just play differently, they forced you to think differently. And from what we've seen so far, Slay the Spire 2 continues that philosophy beautifully. Let's talk about the new faces climbing the Spire. The Necrobinder, a delightfully sarcastic lich who doesn't fight alone. Instead, it's accompanied by a massive reanimated skeletal hand named Osti, which acts as both its bodyguard and its main tool in combat. Osti functions almost like a living shield, absorbing incoming attacks before they can reach the Necrobinder itself, which is crucial because the character has relatively low health. At the same time, the Necrobinder's gameplay revolves around 2 core mechanics, Summon and Doom. Summon abilities strengthen or revive Osti, allowing you to keep the skeletal protector in play, and even scale its health into a massive defensive wall. Meanwhile, Doom is a unique execution mechanic. Instead of dealing damage over time like poison, it marks enemies with stacks that instantly kill them once the total Doom equals or exceeds their current HP. The result is a playstyle that feels almost like controlling a duo. You're constantly balancing the survivability of your undead companion while setting up lethal Doom thresholds or on enemies. Visually, The character also stands out, a skeletal, necromancer-like figure commanding this giant animated hand, which perfectly sells the fantasy of a smug lich letting their creations do the dirty work. The regent is portrayed as an arrogant, star-headed alien, royal from a distant world, often depicted lounging on a floating throne carried by loyal minions while he casually commands the battlefield. His gameplay revolves around a unique form of cosmic resource management centered on stars, a secondary resource that exists alongside the usual energy system. Unlike energy, stars don't disappear at the end of a turn and can be stockpiled indefinitely, allowing the regent to build up massive reserves before unleashing powerful abilities. Another key pillar of the character's designs is Forge, a mechanic tied to his signature weapon, the Sovereign Blade. Instead of scaling damage through traditional buffs like strength, the regent gradually enhances this weapon over the course of a fight. Cards with the Forge keyword permanently increase the blade's damage, meaning that the longer a battle goes on, the more devastating a single swing can become. On top of that, the regent can also transform cards in his hand into disposable minions that can defend or attack on his behalf, reinforcing the fantasy of a cosmic ruler commanding servants while preparing perfectly timed finishing blow. All of this results in a playstyle that feels very different from other characters. The regent isn't about quick damage or simple combos, it's about long-term planning, carefully accumulating stars, forging your weapon, and waiting for the perfect moment to unleash an absolutely massive attack that can end a fight in one swing. About these characters is that they still feel distinctly Slay the Spire. The design philosophy hasn't changed, each character revolves around a few core mechanics that interact in surprising ways. And just like in the first game, the magic happens when different cards start to synergize in unexpected ways. That's where the true depth of the system reveals itself. A deck that looks mediocre on paper suddenly becomes unstoppable because 2 relics and 3 cards create a ridiculous combo. That feeling the moment when a build clicks is something Slay the Spire has always done better than almost any other deck builder, and thankfully that magic is still very much alive in the sequel. One of the biggest changes in Slay the Spire 2 is immediately noticeable: the visuals. The original game had a very simple art style, which is by no means a bad thing. It worked, but it also had a bit of a rough charm. Animations were limited, characters were mostly static, and effects were functional rather than flashy. But in Slay the Spire 2, everything feels far more alive. Characters now animate fluidly, attacks have impact, creatures move, react, and emote during combat, and small visual touches add a surprising amount of personality. Cards don't just resolve anymore, they feel like actions happening on screen. A powerful strike lands with weight, a magical ability ripples across the battlefield, and enemy reactions help sell the moment. These improvements don't fundamentally change the gameplay, but they make every fight feel more dynamic and satisfying. The environments have also received a big upgrade. The map still follows the familiar branching structure that made the original so addictive, but visually, each floor now feels richer. Backgrounds have more depth, lighting adds atmosphere, and enemy designs have noticeably more detail. It's still unmistakably Slay the Spire, but it looks like the developers took the original style and simply leveled it up in every direction. It's the kind of visual evolution that feels respectful to the original while still moving forward. And what makes Slay the Spire 2 exciting isn't just the new content. It's the sense that the developers truly understand why the first game worked. They're not trying to reinvent the entire formula. Instead, they're expanding it in thoughtful ways. New mechanics, new characters, better presentation, and presumably, though we'll have to see over time, hundreds of new cards and relics waiting to be discovered. That combination is incredibly promising, because Slay the Spire has always been a game about discovery. Every run teaches you something new, every defeat pushes you to rethink your strategy, and every victory feels earned. If the original game was about mastering a beautifully designed system, Slay the Spire 2 feels like a returning to that system with a brand new set of possibilities. New synergies, new builds, new ridiculous combos that break the game in ways the developers probably didn't expect. And that's exactly what fans wanted. Not a complete reinvention, but a bigger, deeper version of one of the best roguelike deck builders ever made. I'm really happy how this turned out. I was rooting for it and still am. This is a hit game for sure. They took the essence of the original, built on it, and released a true masterpiece. This is only early access, so despite my enthusiasm, you may still encounter bugs. And if that happens, let the creators know. They are true gamers at heart as well, and they welcome feedback. I wholeheartedly recommend you try Slay the Spire 2. And more content will arrive. Community will inevitably discover strategies that developers never anticipated. But first impressions are incredibly positive. Slay the Spire 2 already feels like a worthy successor, a sequel that respects the brilliance of the original while pushing the idea forward. And if the full game continues in this direction, we might be looking at another modern classic. I can't wait to see what's waiting at the top of the Spire this time. That's it for this video. Let me know in the comments if you already played it and what do you think about the sequel. And if you want to see more videos like this, subscribe. See ya.